I want to start with bad news. 90% of churches in the United States are either plateaued or declining. And there are some very clear reasons from the data of why this is. But I have some good news. There's a few things that we've uncovered that your church can do to totally turn the trend. Let's talk about them. Hey guys, I'm Thomas here from Reach Right, and we put out new content like this every single week, so it would mean a lot to me if you have a second to hit that subscribe button down below. Now, the reason why most churches are in that category of 90% of them being plateaued or declining is not really that much of a mystery. At the risk of oversimplifying it, it's because we are not seeing enough visitors walk through our doors. Churches naturally will lose around 10 to 15% of their member base every single year just from natural attrition. Things like people moving away or people getting married, it just leads to transition in people's lives. It's not all bad, but we just have to come to terms with it as church leaders that the people that are in our church today, unfortunately, 10 to 15% of them won't be with us next year. So in order to replace them and then some in order to grow, it takes a lot of first-time visitors. I'm a pastor at a church of around 250 people, and we've just come to terms with the fact that in order to grow as a church, given normal assimilation rates, we need somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 visitors to walk through our doors every Sunday just to see a modest 10% growth this year. How does that sound to you? Does that seem like a lot of visitors or is it a few? Well, I'll say for most churches of around 250 people, that seems like a lot. Even if you're a smaller church of 100 people on a typical Sunday, you still need around 4 or 5 visitors every week just to see 10% growth this year. And in talking with churches all over the country over the last few years, I found that very few of us have enough visitors walking through our doors in order to see that modest growth that we're hoping for. But there are a few churches that are totally bucking the trend and are seeing more, if not many more visitors walk through their doors, and most of them are doing a few things in common. The first thing you need to do if you want to see more visitors walk through your door is to fix your website. We talked with a pastor just today who told us a story about a couple that came to their church this last weekend, and they actually told the pastor that their church was the last one that they had planned on visiting. Why? It's because their website made such a bad first impression. This pastor acknowledged that his website was probably several years out of date. And we got to thinking that for every person that does show up and actually tells you that they didn't like your website, there's probably 20 other families that didn't show up and you'll never have the chance to meet. This is why your church website is so important. It is the first impression for nearly every single person that walks in your doors. Think about it. Would you ever step foot in a church without knowing a little bit more about who they are or what they believe or what they stand for? Nobody would. So you need to take your church website seriously, and growing churches by and large are doing that. Hey, maybe you're not sure how your church website actually stacks up and if it's good or not. We actually have a totally free church website and marketing strategy review that we offer to everyone free of charge. I'll put a link to it down in the description. Take advantage of it. We'll give you a complete review of how you stand right now and then give you some marching orders on what you can do to make some changes and fix it. I hope you'll check that out. Secondly, your church might not be growing if you have a bad social media presence. And this just comes down to overall awareness. If people don't know you exist, then they'll never, under any circumstances, show up to your church. They have to know that you're around, and the way that people are introduced to everything from brands to businesses to, yes, churches in 2024 is through their social presence. And please hear me in this. I'm not saying just having an account on all the major social platforms. I'm talking about actually having a real presence online. Posting regularly on your Instagram and Facebook and YouTube Shorts and TikTok accounts. Doing that in regular intervals and being consistent with it is really the key to this. And on top of that, it's so important that you remember that it is social media. It's not just a one-way conversation. It has to be both ways, and building engagement by responding to comments and interacting with people is one of the best ways to do that. A third reason that so many churches aren't growing right now is because they are practically invisible on search engines. One of the primary ways that people find a church, especially if they're new to an area, is they type in the old faithful churches near me. They'll put that into Google, and the first few churches that pop up, usually in that Google map pack, are the exact ones that they're gonna visit, and oftentimes in that order. If your church doesn't rank in those top 3, you're virtually invisible to any of these people looking for new churches. And when people are typing in that search, typically they're in a time of transition in their lives, and they're very likely to get connected into that first church that they visit. Well, how do you test to see how your church is doing there? Let me tell you what not to do. If you're sitting in your church office and you type in churches near me, well, I hope your church would come up number 1, because you are literally sitting in your church and it is the nearest one. Google knows where you are on your phone, and so they're gonna try and give you relevant results. The best way to actually check is not to even do a search from your home or some other place in the city, but actually to use a tool, and we have a totally free one that'll give you an exact ranking, not just right at your church, but in areas around your church building, so you can see where you rank in each part of town. It's totally free. I hope you'll take advantage of that. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below. The fourth and final reason why your church might not be growing has less to do with getting visitors in the door, but what we do with them afterward. So many churches do not follow up well with their first-time visitors, and in my view, that's akin to what Jesus was talking about in the parable of the talents, when he talks about the person who buries the talents. Don't be the one that buries the talents. In fact, at my church, we're in the middle of rebuilding our entire visitor follow-up process, and I actually made a video all about it that you can watch and see our exact process as we're building it. It includes every single piece of communication that we use, and you can actually copy it word for word. You'll see the video right here, or you can click the link down in the description.